If function is one of the most popular functions in Excel. It allows you to make logical comparison between a value and what you expect. In simplest form, if function says if something is true, then do something, otherwise do something else. So if statement can have two results. The first result is if your comparison is true, and the second is if your comparison is false. So the original index of if function is if logical test, comma, value if true, comma, and optional argument value if false. Logical test is required argument, the condition you want to test. Value if true is a required argument, the value you want return if the result of the logical test is true. Value if false is an optional argument, the value you want to return if the logical test is false. Let's take a simple example of if function in an Excel demo. So in cell C10, we'll apply if function. If value in B10, which is equal to yes, return the true value, which is 1, or I want 2. So we got 1 because the condition is met, which was yes. Similarly, if C13 is equal to yes, I want 1 when the condition is true, otherwise I want 2. So we got 1 here because our condition is met. If there was something else here, we will get 2. As you can see, if function can be used to evaluate both text and values. It can be used to evaluate errors. You are not limited to only checking if one thing is equal to another and returning the single result. You can also use mathematical operation and perform additional calculation depending upon your criteria. You can also nested multiple if function together in order to perform multiple comparison. Note, if you are going to use text in formulas, you need to wrap the text around inverted commas like text. The only exception to that is true or false, which Excel automatically understands. The best way to start writing an if statement is to think about what you are trying to accomplish, what comparison you are trying to make. Many times, writing an if statement can be simple as thinking through the logic in your head. What should happen if condition is met versus what should happen if condition is not met. You will always want to make sure that your steps follow logical progression, or else your formula won't do what you think it should. This is especially important when you create complex nested if statements. Let's take more example for if function. So if actual is less than budget, we want to return with tax within otherwise we want to return tax since 750 it's less than 800, so it is within the budget. We got the return value of within budget. We can easily copy paste this formula down. We get various answers. So in the next example, actual is more than the budget, so we got over budget. Similarly, in the next example, 525 was budget and actual is 515, so we are within the budget, and so on. Now let's take another example using the same data set. So if actual is more than budget, we'll do a calculation now. Actual minus budget, otherwise we want nothing, that is 0. Since the first example has value less than the budget, we got 0. Let's copy the formula down. And in second example, the value is more than the budget, so we got 50, which is the difference between 425 and 375, and so on. Now let's take an example of a nested if function. So in this example, we'll be testing expenditure budgeted and expenditure actual. So if your budget or expenditure, or you can say if your actual expenditure spend is equal to your original budget, there will be no bonus, no penalty. But if your actual expenditure is more than the budget, there would be a penalty. But if you have saved, that means your actual expenditure is less than the budget, there would be bonus. So how to write this formula, we'll see here. So if actual is equal to budget, we want to return word called no bonus, no penalty, right? So bonus and actual are equal. I'm giving absolute value cell here because we don't want to move when we drag it down. So that's why I've given this dollar signs. Now we want to test one more condition. If the actual is more than the budget, then we want to give penalty, otherwise saving. So if actual is more than budget, since this is expenditure, there would be a penalty. We'll be giving absolute reference. And now there's only one condition left. If the actual is more than the budget, there would be penalty. So there can be only one more possibility, that is bonus. So we'll be selecting this value as a final false value. We'll be completing our if function, press enter. Now in our first case, there is a bonus. Why? Because actual spend is less than the budget. So let's take this formula down. In second example, since the expenditure is more than a budget, there is a penalty. In third example, actual expenditure is less than the budget, so there is a bonus. But in fourth example, there is actual expenditure equal to budget, so there is no bonus, no penalty. Similarly, in last case also, actual expenditure is equal to budget, so there is no penalty. So this is how you use nested if function. There are some drawbacks of using if function. While Excel allows you to nested up to 24 different if functions, it is not always advisable to do so. Multiple if statements require a great deal of thought to build them correctly and make sure that their logic can calculate correctly through each condition all the way to the end. If you don't nest your if statement 100% accurately, then a formula might work 75% of the time but return unexpected results 25% of the time. Unfortunately, the odds of you calculating 25% is slim. Multiple if statement can become very difficult to maintain, especially when you come back sometime later and try to figure out what you or worse someone else you was trying to do. If statements require multiple open and close parentheses, which can be difficult to manage depending upon how complex your formula becomes. This is the kind of function we'll be using in prepayment calculation in our model. So we'll see this in more detail when we prepare our prepayment model. Thank you for watching.